ladies and gentlemen, we have got another speaker for you now. Please welcome, he's the man behind the Stand Comedy Club and the Glasgow Comedy Festival. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Tommy Sheppard.
Thanks, Viv. Long before I ran the Stand Comedy Club, I did another job. I was in the Labour Party for over 20 years. I stood and won a candidate for the council and served as a Labour councillor for 8 years. I stood as a Labour parliamentary candidate, and for 3 years I served as Jack, now Lord McConnell's deputy, as number 2 at the Scottish Labour Party. The values and the things that I believed in then have not changed, and it's because of my beliefs that the Labour Party left me, and it's because of my beliefs that I'll be voting yes on the 18th of September. Because I've quite simply come to the realization that I am fed up. The older I get, the more impatient I get for change, and I'm fed up waiting. And I think it's going to be much easier to achieve the type of society we want in a country of 5.5 million people where we have our own government, rather than remain as a small part of a much larger country which ignores our wishes and aspirations. So, I want to say this, though, that when you look at how people are voting, and I have every Saturday morning I go out for 2 or 3 hours on the knocker, have been doing since last September. But when you look at how people are voting, it seems clear to me that most Conservative voters are going to vote no, most SNP supporters are going to vote yes, most Liberal supporters have ceased to exist, and the key vote in this election, the outcome of this election, will depend upon what happens with Labour voters, which way they split, and whether enough people who are used to voting Labour can be persuaded to vote yes on the 18th of September. And for that reason, I think we have to address the concerns that they have and the arguments that are being deployed by the Better Together camp to try and keep those Labour voters away from voting yes. Now, some of these have already been dealt with. It's been, clearly the Better Together tries to label this campaign as just the work of the SNP, as a nationalist campaign. And by the way, let's be honest, when they say nationalist, what they're trying to do is to plant in the public mind, at the back of it, to plant a very sinister connotation. They don't mean anything about national pride or standing up for your country. They mean the type of nationalism that we have seen throughout the 20th century in parts of Europe. They're trying to make an association between a very ugly manifestation of nationalism and the campaign that's being run for independence in Scotland. And it's a shameful tactic, I think, but it's one that's being deployed. And the answer to it is quite simply that the proposition that the people that live in Scotland should be the ones who control its future is not a nationalist proposition. It's a simple democratic argument. And we have to say that time and time again. The other thing that's been, and this was mentioned, I think, by Kieran, that one of the things that they try and suggest is that if we vote for independence on the 18th of September, then we are betraying ordinary working people in the rest of these islands. That somehow, if Scotland becomes independent, then forever and a day, the people of England will be condemned to live under permanent Tory rule. And that's an argument that resonates. I think it resonates in particular with the 700,000 people who now live in Scotland, but were born in England. It also resonates with me because I have family and friends throughout Britain. And if I actually thought that by voting yes, I was somehow betraying them to a lifetime of Toryism, then I might actually think about it and reconsider my position. So we need to have arguments against that. And the first thing to say is, well, it is not true that England cannot elect a Labour government. In the last 3 out of the last 4 elections, the Labour Party has won it. Let's leave to one side what they've done with the victory, but they have won a majority of votes and they have won a majority of members of Parliament, not just in the United Kingdom, they have won an actual majority of members of Parliament in England and Wales. In fact, the size of the Labour majority in each of those 3 governments is greater than the total number of Labour MPs in Scotland. So it's just a fiction to say that if we choose to have self-government, that means that the people of England can only have the choice of Conservatives. It's up to the people of England. The second argument against it is, how disrespectful would we be if we said to people living in England that it doesn't matter how you vote, you're going to have the government you didn't vote for as well, because we say so. And if we hold that people should get the governments they elect north of the border, then equally that must be the case that people should get the governments they elect south of the border. So if people in England do wish to choose to have a Conservative government, that is their right, and we should respect that. The third thing about this, though, is that do not pretend for one moment that there will not be consequences for the people who live in England and Wales of our vote on the 18th of September. We're not just going to float off somewhere in the North Sea and be forgotten about. This is going to create a major political upheaval in the whole of the United Kingdom. We are talking about taking the first step to end the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And that cannot... That cannot do other than have tremendous consequences for politics south of the border as well. I predict, for one thing, that as sure as night follows day, if the people in the northeast of England and the northwest and the West Midlands and the southwest see us getting self-government, getting control over our own affairs, they're going to want some of that action too. And it will... and the arguments for improved local and regional government throughout these islands to contradict and counter the power of the city-state of London, which is sucking their economies dry, will be refueled, and I think you will see dramatic change throughout the whole of these islands, and that will be to the benefit of the people that the Better Together campaign are talking about. And the final argument is this, that actually there's more than one way to demonstrate solidarity. We don't just demonstrate solidarity by joining a campaign and going on a demonstration. We demonstrate solidarity by combining together, seizing the apparatus of government and using it to change the world. And it's entirely possible that we could have a situation where a progressive Scottish government, an independent Scottish government, can be combining with other progressive forces throughout Europe and changing the situation for working people on the ground, running interference with the forces of international capital, creating more space for workers' rights. Workers' rights, by the way, in Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, and Cardiff, against the wishes of their own government. And that really brings me to my final point, that really this is not about nationalism. I think it's so refreshing today, actually. I've been here since 12 o'clock, and I've heard everyone speak, and I don't think there's anyone who's put forward what you would call a nationalist argument. The reason why we want control of our own country is so we can be internationalist. That's what it's all about. We want to have a Scotland which will combine in partnership with other governments throughout Britain, throughout Europe, throughout the world, to try and change things and make them better, so that those Labour voters in Scotland, those ideas of fairness and equality and justice that they hanker after, so that they can actually be achieved. And we do not have to have this forlorn attitude of having to simply put up with it generation after generation. We can change the world. And the message to Eddie Izzard and all the others who say, oh, Scotland, don't leave, the message is simple. England, come with us. So, that's really all I wanted to say, apart from just to go back to the very beginning when Jim Sunners was first up on the platform, and he made the vital point that for 15 hours on the 18th of September, the people of Scotland will be in control of their own destiny. And we will know by probably about 3 a.m. the next morning whether they have chosen to keep that power for themselves or whether they have chosen to give it away. Our job and our task, and I believe we can and will do this, is to give them enough self-belief and self-confidence that they will seize the opportunities presented to them. Thank you.